In a hall where pretense and luxury took center stage, a single sentence spoken in Italian silenced the crowd's laughter and instantly reversed the roles. The waiter, until then invisible to the elite, revealed a power no one expected. What was meant to be a simple response became the beginning of a story full of humiliations, unexpected alliances, and plot twists that would forever change the lives of several people. But no one that evening would have guessed that this foreign language would become a bridge between worlds that were never supposed to meet. Chapter 1. Michael Smith stopped before the tall glass doors of the office building, feeling sweat bead on his palms. 34 years old and still his heart hammered like a teenager's before a first date. This wasn't a date, however. It was his last resort. 9-year-old Susan waited at home, peeking through the window at every car that passed their modest street in Pittsburgh. Dad will come back with good news, she'd been telling herself all morning, arranging her drawings on the kitchen table. Michael knew this because he had seen her through the window before he left. That little girl was his whole world, ever since Linda died 2 years ago in a car accident. Back then, he was an engineer at the steel mill, a man with a respectable job and a steady paycheck. Then came the drinking to drown the pain, then the layoff, and finally, the long road back to sobriety. Now he worked as a maintenance man in an old apartment building, putting himself back together piece by piece. But it wasn't enough for Susan's medical care. The child needed an expensive heart operation, and public health care meant months of waiting, months his daughter might not have. He pushed open the heavy doors and entered the marble lobby. A receptionist in an elegant suit looked him over, noticing his old jacket and faded pants. "I have an appointment with Ms. Johnson," he said, trying to make his voice sound confident. "14th floor, the elevator is to the right," she replied coolly, without looking up from her computer screen. Jennifer Johnson stood by the panoramic window of her office, watching the traffic on the Chicago streets. At 29, she was already running the logistics company she'd inherited from her father. People called her the Iron Lady, though no one knew how much the nickname hurt her. A year ago, she had lost her fiancé in the same accident that killed Michael's wife. James had been on his way to her that day with an engagement ring. Jennifer never found out, but she carried an emptiness in her heart that no amount of work could fill. Her assistant entered the office. "Miss Johnson, Mr. Smith is here about the foundation." Jennifer turned from the window. A year ago, she had started a foundation to help children in difficult life situations, but each case, each story, tore her heart apart all over again. Maybe it was a way to atone for sins she hadn't committed, but for which she felt responsible. Michael walked into the office, his eyes wide. He had never been in such a luxurious place. Mahogany furniture, gold-framed paintings, the scent of expensive perfume filling the air. And then he saw her. Jennifer stood by her desk in a black business suit, her blonde hair in an elegant bun, and her cold blue eyes studied him. She was beautiful, but in a way that commanded respect, not affection. "Mr. Smith, please, have a seat," she said, gesturing to a leather armchair in front of her desk. Her voice was calm and controlled. Michael sat on the edge of the chair, nervously clutching the completed forms in his hands. "Thank you for seeing me, Ms. Johnson. I've read your application, a heart operation for your 9-year-old daughter. A significant amount," she stated dryly, flipping through the documents. "What do you do for a living?" "I'm a maintenance man at an apartment building on Main Street," he answered softly, feeling his cheeks burn with shame. Jennifer looked up. She saw in his eyes the same pain she knew from her own reflection, but she had learned not to show weakness. "You used to work at the steel mill as an engineer," she read from the documents. "What happened?" Michael clenched his fists. "My wife, Linda, she died in a car accident 2 years ago. I couldn't handle it. I started drinking. I lost my job." A silence filled the office. Jennifer felt a lump in her throat, but she quickly composed herself. "And now?" she asked cautiously. "Now I've been sober for a year. I go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I have a job, but a maintenance man's salary. It's not enough for a private operation, and the public waiting list could be too long," she finished for him. Michael nodded, unable to speak. Jennifer stood up and walked to the window again. She saw Michael's reflection in the glass, a hunched man fighting for his child's life. It reminded her of her own father when he fought for her life as a little girl with a heart defect. "There are no guarantees," she said finally, without turning around. "The foundation is not a money machine." "I understand," Michael whispered, bracing himself for a rejection. "But your case requires further investigation," she added, turning to him. "I need more information about your daughter, her medical condition, your financial situation." Michael's heart quickened. "I have all the medical documents at home. I can bring them whenever you want. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. And please bring your daughter," she said firmly. "I want to meet her." Michael stood up, his legs trembling with emotion. Thank you so much." As he was leaving, Jennifer called after him, "Mr. Smith?" He turned in the doorway. "God willing, everything will work out," she said softly, using a phrase she'd heard from her grandmother as a child. Michael smiled for the first time in weeks. "Every cloud has a silver lining," he replied, closing the door behind him. Jennifer was left alone in her office, feeling a strange quickening of her heart. She couldn't stop thinking about this man who had lost everything but hadn't given up. Something in his eyes reminded her of her own determination years ago. The next day, Michael came with Susan. The little girl was as delicate as a bird, but her eyes sparkled with intelligence. She was wearing her best dress, a light blue one with white flowers that Linda had bought her before she died. "Good afternoon," Susan said politely as she walked into the office. "Dad said you're a very important lady." Jennifer felt her cold facade crack. "Good afternoon, Susan. I am important, but important people sometimes need help too." The little girl nodded with a seriousness beyond her years. "Dad is important too. He takes care of our house and all our neighbors. Mrs. Williams says Dad has a heart of gold." Michael blushed. "Susan. And Dad reads me a bedtime story every night, even when he's really tired," the girl continued. "And he tells me about Mom, how beautiful she was, and how much she loved us." Jennifer felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. She knelt down to the girl's level. "Tell me, Susan, what do you want to do when you get well after your operation?" The girl's eyes lit up. "I want to be a doctor, like Dr. Williams, who examines me, so I can help other children who are sick like me." For a moment, there was silence in the office. Then Jennifer stood up and went to the safe in the corner of the room. "Mr. Smith," she said, pulling out a thick document, "the foundation will cover the cost of your daughter's operation. All of it." Michael sank into the chair, unable to believe what he was hearing. Susan jumped for joy. "But I have one condition," Jennifer added, looking at him seriously. "I want you to help me with a project to renovate an old building on Mariacca Street while Susan recovers. I need someone who knows about historical building restoration." Michael looked at her in disbelief. But I'm not an engineer anymore. You know, experience doesn't just disappear, and I believe in second chances." Jennifer interrupted. Susan ran up to Jennifer and hugged her legs. "Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Dad told me there are angels in the world, but I didn't know they wore business suits." Jennifer felt a warmth spread through her chest that she hadn't felt in months. She stroked the girl's head. "I'm not an angel, Susan. I'm just someone who knows that sometimes we all need help." As the Smiths left the building, Jennifer stood by the window, watching Michael hold his daughter's hand as she skipped with joy. For the first time in a year, she felt like she was doing something truly important. Not for newspaper headlines or social media photos, but for this little girl who wanted to be a doctor. But she didn't know yet that Dr. David Brown, the company's senior board advisor and her trusted friend for years, had been watching the entire scene from the hallway. His face showed concern. Jennifer was becoming too emotional, and that could hurt the company. He had to stop it before it was too late. That evening, Michael was cooking dinner for Susan, humming for the first time in months. The little girl sat at the table, coloring a picture of a castle. "Dad," she said suddenly, "that lady has sad eyes, like yours before you stopped crying." Michael put down his spoon and sat next to his daughter. "What do you mean, honey? She lost someone important too." "I saw it in her eyes," Susan replied with a wisdom that surpassed her age. "Maybe we can help her too." That night, after Susan was asleep, Michael stood on the balcony of his modest apartment for a long time, looking out at the city. For the first time in 2 years, he was thinking not just about survival, but about the future, about what he could build for his daughter. But he was also thinking about that woman, Jennifer Johnson, who had given him hope when he thought there was none. There was something about her that intrigued him. Underneath the tough businesswoman exterior was something more. He didn't know yet that tomorrow would be the start of the most complicated period in both of their lives, that Dr. Brown was already plotting a way to distance Jennifer from unsuitable company, and that Susan, despite her young age, would become the bridge between two broken souls. In Chicago, a story was beginning that would change the lives of all its characters. A story about love that can blossom even from the ruins of the past, if only one has the courage to give it a chance. Chapter 2. A week after the foundation meeting, Michael got a call from Jennifer's assistant. "Ms. Johnson would like to meet with you tomorrow at 7 p.m. to discuss the Mariacca Street project. Please leave the technical documents with the front desk." Michael stared at his phone in surprise. 7 p.m. That was not a time for business meetings. Susan, who had just come home from school, noticed his confusion. "What's wrong, Dad?" she asked, taking off her backpack. "That lady..." Miss Johnson wants to meet in the evening. That's good, the girl rejoiced. Maybe she wants to be your friend. I told you she has sad eyes. Michael shook his head, smiling despite himself. Susan had a remarkable ability to simplify complicated adult matters. The next evening, Michael stood in front of the company building, holding a folder with the plans for the Mariacca Street building. He had worked on them all night, recalling everything he'd learned in college and at the steel mill. His father, a coal miner from Pittsburgh, always used to say, "Son, hard work ennobles a man. There's no shame in an honest day's labor." Jennifer was waiting in her office, but this time she looked different. Instead of an elegant suit, she wore a simple black dress and her hair was down. She looked younger, more approachable. "I apologize for calling you in so late," she said as Michael entered, "but this is the only time I can focus on projects that are close to my heart." "No problem, Susan's doing her homework anyway." At the sound of the girl's name, Jennifer smiled involuntarily. "How is she feeling before the operation?" "She's brave. She's more worried about not needing me too much in the hospital." Jennifer nodded and pointed to the conference table, where she had spread out the plans for the historic building. "This is a pre-war apartment building. My father bought it in '91, right after the end of the Cold War. He wanted to turn it into a cultural center, but he didn't get the chance." Michael walked closer, studying the documents. "The north wall has some cracks, but the load-bearing structure looks solid," he commented, forgetting his insecurities. "We'll need to check the foundations and the wiring." "You really know your stuff," Jennifer said with appreciation. "I worked on renovating buildings at the shipyard. Some were over 100 years old." Michael hesitated. "My grandfather was a builder too. He helped rebuild Chicago after the fire. He said every brick has a story." For a moment they worked in silence, bent over the plans. Sometimes their hands touched when they pointed to the same details, and they both quickly pulled back, pretending nothing had happened. "Why a cultural center?" Michael asked suddenly. Jennifer looked up. "My father came from a family that lost everything during the war. Their home, their business, most of their family. When the transition happened in 1989, he always said, 'Jennifer, culture is the only thing no one can ever take from us.'" Michael felt a lump in his throat. "My grandfather said something similar, that a person can lose their home and money, but what they carry in their heart stays forever." "Exactly," Jennifer whispered, her eyes momentarily moist. Suddenly, Dr. David Brown, an elegant man in his 40s in an expensive suit, walked into the office. His cold eyes immediately fell on Michael. "Jennifer, I didn't realize you had evening meetings," he said in a slightly sarcastic tone. "David, this is Mr. Smith. He's a specialist in historic building restoration," Jennifer replied, immediately reverting to her business tone. Dr. Brown came closer, sizing Michael up. "Smith, isn't this the gentleman with the foundation application?" Michael felt his cheeks burn with shame. "Yes, that's me. I see." Brown smiled coolly. "Jennifer, may we speak privately?" "About what?" Jennifer asked sharply. "About company policy regarding mixing business with personal matters." The silence that fell over the office was icy. Michael felt like an intruder. "Maybe I should go," he said quietly, reaching for his folder. "No," Jennifer interrupted him firmly. "David, explain what you mean." Dr. Brown looked pointedly at Michael, then back at Jennifer. "The board may have reservations about unconventional collaborations." "The board?" Jennifer stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. "Since when does the board decide on my philanthropic projects?" Michael couldn't listen anymore. "Ms. Johnson, I really need to go. Susan is waiting for me." As he left the building, he heard their raised voices behind him. Dr. Brown was explaining something and Jennifer was responding more and more sharply. Michael felt that he had somehow put the woman who was helping him in a difficult position. At home, Susan immediately noticed his sadness. "Dad, why are you sad? Was the meeting bad?" "No, honey, it's just adult stuff is sometimes complicated. Or maybe that lady is just scared," Susan suggested, coloring her drawing with a serious expression. "Like you were when you were scared to tell me that Mom wasn't coming back." Michael sat down next to his daughter. "What are you talking about? I saw how she looked at you during our meeting. The same way you look at me when you think I'm asleep but I'm not. With love but also with fear." The wisdom of a 9-year-old surprised Michael. "You think Ms. Johnson is scared?" "Adults are often scared. They're scared of losing someone again, so they pretend they don't care about anyone." That night, Michael couldn't sleep for a long time, thinking about his daughter's words. Maybe Jennifer wasn't the cold businesswoman she pretended to be. Maybe under that tough shell was a broken heart. Meanwhile, Jennifer was in her luxurious apartment overlooking the Hudson, drinking tea and watching the city lights. The conversation with David was still ringing in her ears. "Jennifer, I understand you want to help, but this man, he's not suitable company for a woman in your position." "David, since when do you decide who I see?" I'm not deciding, I'm warning you. The media, the competition, everyone is looking for a way to discredit you. But why did those words hurt her so much? Why did she feel the need to defend Michael? After all, it was just a professional collaboration. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Johnson, thank you for the meeting today. If you deem it appropriate, I can prepare a detailed quote for the renovation. Michael Smith. Jennifer smiled involuntarily. He was so official, so polite, but also proud. He wasn't apologizing for anything, not begging for understanding. She replied, please prepare the quote. We'll meet next week, Jay. Then she quickly deleted the message and wrote again, please prepare the quote, Jennifer Johnson. But that also seemed too official. In the end, she wrote, okay, how is Susan feeling? The reply came almost immediately. Excited about the operation. She says she wants to be as strong as her new friend, Ms. Johnson. Jennifer felt a warmth spread through her chest. This little girl had something magical about her. Maybe she was the key to making their adult problems seem small. The next day when Jennifer arrived at the office, David was already waiting for her. Jennifer, we need to talk about yesterday's situation. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. I checked on this Smith fellow, a former alcoholic, unemployed for 8 months, in debt. David, she cut him off sharply. That's none of your business. It is my business when it threatens the company's reputation and your safety. You don't know anything about this man. Jennifer turned to him, her eyes burning with anger. I know he's fighting for his child's life. I know that despite a personal tragedy, he didn't give up. And I know he has more honor in his little finger than half of our business partners. David sighed. Jennifer, I'm worried about you. Ever since James died. Don't talk about James, she interrupted him coldly. I have to. Ever since he died, you've been looking for a way to atone for what happened. But saving every broken family man won't bring James back. Jennifer's face went pale. Get out. Now. Jennifer, get out. When David left, Jennifer sank into her chair, feeling tears welling up. James. If he hadn't been driving to her that evening with the ring, if she hadn't been trying to rush their relationship, if only... But maybe David was right. Maybe she was looking for redemption in helping others. Or maybe for the first time in a year, she had met a man who didn't want her money or social position, but needed her just as desperately as she needed to feel needed. That evening, as she was finishing work, she saw a familiar figure through the window. Michael was waiting under the building with a little girl by the hand. Jennifer quickly went downstairs. What's wrong? She asked, approaching them. Susan wanted to see you before the operation, Michael explained. I told her you didn't have time, but I always have time for Susan, Jennifer interrupted, crouching down in front of the girl. What's going on, honey? I was scared we wouldn't see you again, the girl confessed. Dad was very sad today and I thought you two had a fight. Jennifer looked at Michael. We didn't have a fight, Susan. Adults sometimes have different opinions, but that doesn't mean they don't like each other. So you like each other? The girl asked hopefully. Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances. For a moment, there was an awkward silence. It means we respect each other, Jennifer finally replied. Now come on, I want to show you something special. She led them to a small cafe in the building lobby, which was already closed, but Jennifer had the keys. She turned on the lights and led Susan to a refrigerated case full of desserts. Pick whatever you want. This will be our little secret. The girl's eyes widened with delight. She chose a small cheesecake with raspberries, and Jennifer made coffee for herself and Michael. They sat at a small table, watching Susan devour the dessert with a blissful expression. This is the best cheesecake in the world, the girl declared. My grandma used to make something similar, Michael commented. After the war, when there was hardly any food, she would find a way to make small sweets for the kids. Where was that? Jennifer asked. In Pittsburgh. Grandpa worked in the coal mine, and Grandma would sew for the neighbors. Every cloud has a silver lining, she always said. Jennifer smiled. My grandma said something similar. After the family lost everything, she found reasons to be happy in the smallest things. Maybe all grandmas say that, Susan suggested, because they're smart, and they know that life is sometimes hard, but you can always find something good. The adults looked at each other over the girl's head. At that moment, they both felt something they hadn't experienced in months. Peace. As if the outside world had ceased to exist, and there was only this small cafe, a delicious cheesecake, and a little girl who connected them with her innocent wisdom. But neither of them knew that Dr. David Brown was watching them through the glass doors of the building, taking pictures with his phone. The plan that had started to form in his mind had just received its first documentation. Chapter 3. Susan's operation was scheduled for Thursday morning. On Wednesday evening, Michael sat by his daughter's bed, trying to hide his fear behind a calm smile. Dad, don't worry so much, Susan said, stroking his hand. Dr. Williams said my heart is strong. It just needs a little fixing. I know, honey, but it's normal for parents to worry. And is Miss Jennifer worried too? Michael hesitated. Since the cafe meeting a week ago, they had talked every day. Short phone calls about the operation preparations, but there was something more than just professional concern in their voices. I think so, he answered honestly. That's good, Susan stated. It means she likes us, really likes us, not just pretending. Michael's phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. How is Susan feeling, thinking of you? Michael replied, brave as ever. Thank you for thinking of us. You can call me Jennifer. We won't be strangers tomorrow. Michael's heart beat faster. This small change in formality meant more than he could express in words. He wrote back, thank you, Jennifer. The next morning, as Susan was being prepared for surgery, Michael sat in the hospital corridor, clutching the rosary his grandmother had given him. Holy Mother of God, please watch over my little girl, he whispered to himself. I didn't know you were religious. He looked up. Jennifer was standing before him in a simple black coat, holding a bouquet of bright chrysanthemums. Jennifer, I didn't expect you here. I promised Susan I'd be here, she replied, sitting next to him. How are you holding up? Like a parent who's handing their child over to strangers and hoping everyone knows what they're doing. Jennifer nodded in understanding. When I was 7, I had heart surgery too. I remember my father's face that morning. It was exactly like yours is now. Michael looked at her in astonishment. You had a heart problem too? A congenital valve defect. That's why I was so quick to help Susan. I knew what she was going through. For a moment, they sat in silence, listening to the hospital sounds around them. Were you scared? Michael asked softly. Very. But I was most afraid that my father would be left alone. My mother died giving birth to me, so it was just my dad and me. And how did he manage? He prayed. He wasn't particularly religious, but that day, he prayed like he never had before. Jennifer smiled sadly. He said later that in that moment he understood why people believe in miracles. Michael reached out and gently touched her hand. Thank you for telling me that. Jennifer didn't pull her hand away. For the first time in months, she felt understood, not as a company CEO, not as a donor, but as a person who had been through the same fear. Mr. Smith? A nurse approached them. The operation was successful. Susan is sleeping, but you can see her. Michael jumped to his feet and Jennifer followed him. In the recovery room, Susan looked so small in the big bed, hooked up to various machines, but she was breathing evenly, and a peaceful smile was on her face. My hero, Michael whispered, kissing his daughter's forehead. Jennifer stood to the side, watching the scene. Something inside her was both breaking and coming together at the same time. This small family, which had lost so much, still knew how to love with such strength. A few hours later, Susan woke up. The first thing she saw was her father's face leaning over her. Dad, it worked. It worked, honey. You have a brand new, healthy little heart now. Susan looked around the room and noticed Jennifer sitting in the corner. Miss Jennifer, you stayed. Jennifer came closer to the bed. I promised you, remember? And are the flowers for me? Of course. I thought the bright colors would help you get better faster. Susan smiled weakly. Dad, can Miss Jennifer stay with us tonight? I don't want her to be alone in that big house. Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances. Susan, Miss Johnson probably has her own things to do. Actually, Jennifer interrupted, I don't have any plans tonight. If you'll let me, I'd be happy to stay. That night, as Susan slept under the influence of painkillers, Michael and Jennifer sat in the hospital chairs, talking in whispers. Tell me about Linda, Jennifer said suddenly. Michael tensed up. Why? Because I can see how much you loved her, and I can see how much you're still hurting. Michael was silent for a long moment. Then he began to speak quietly. Linda was a light. She could laugh at the silliest jokes and cry over every stray cat. When we met, I was a serious engineer who planned everything out. She taught me to live in the moment. How long were you together? 12 years. We met in college. We got married when we were 25. Michael smiled sadly. She used to laugh and say I was too predictable, that I needed to learn to be spontaneous. And did you? I tried. We once took a surprise trip to the beach. We left in the middle of the night, just the three of us. Susan was 5 and she was so excited about the adventure. Jennifer listened, feeling a strange pang of envy, not for Linda, but for that kind of love, that kind of bond she had never experienced herself. What about you? Michael asked. Tell me about James. Jennifer's face darkened. James was safe. We had known each other for years. Our families were friends. Everything was arranged logically. That doesn't sound like a great love story. It wasn't, Jennifer admitted quietly. I thought love was about stability, shared goals, a similar background. It was only after his death that I realized I had never felt that that wildness people talk about with him. Do you regret it? I regret that he's gone, but I don't regret that I didn't marry him before the accident. Jennifer looked at Michael. That's a terrible thing to say, isn't it? That I feel relieved. It's human, Michael replied. Linda always said that the worst thing you can do to another person is to love them out of a sense of duty. That night, as they both dozed in the hospital chairs, Susan woke up and watched them for a moment. Dad and Miss Jennifer were sitting close to each other, their hands almost touching. The little girl smiled and closed her eyes, knowing her plan was working. They spent the next 3 days together at the hospital. Jennifer came every day after work, bringing books for Susan and coffee for Michael. They talked about everything and nothing, building a bond between them that neither had expected. You know, Susan said one evening, as Jennifer helped her put together a new puzzle, I think Mom would be happy that Dad has a new friend now. Jennifer stopped mid-motion. Why do you think that? Because Mom always said you can't be happy alone, that people are meant to take care of each other. And aren't you jealous that your dad might like someone else? Susan shook her head. Mom is still in our hearts, but hearts are big. There's room for a lot of people. Jennifer felt tears welling up in her eyes. This 9-year-old girl had more wisdom than most of the adults she knew. On Friday, when Susan was discharged from the hospital, Jennifer offered to drive them home. During the ride, Susan slept in the back seat, and Michael and Jennifer talked quietly. I don't know how to thank you, Michael said, for everything, for the operation, for being with us. Don't thank me, Jennifer interrupted. These few days, they meant a lot to me too. I haven't felt so needed in a long time. Truly needed. You'll always be needed by us. Something in the way he said it made Jennifer look at him intently. For a moment, a tension hung between them that they both felt. Michael, she began, but her phone cut her off mid-sentence. The display showed David's name. Jennifer answered reluctantly. Jennifer, where are you? We have a meeting with the German investors. What meeting? I have nothing in my calendar. They rescheduled for today. They've been waiting for half an hour. Jennifer looked at her watch. It was already past 6. David, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And one more thing. We need to talk about your recent activities. Jennifer hung up, a sense of unease in her stomach. Is everything okay? Michael asked. Yes, just work, always work. When they arrived at Michael's building, Susan woke up. Are we home already? She asked sleepily. Yes, honey. Miss Jennifer has to go to work now. Susan reached out her arms to Jennifer. Thank you for the most beautiful flowers in the world and for staying with us. Jennifer hugged the little girl, feeling her heart clench with affection. No, thank you, Susan, for letting me be a part of your family. You'll always be a part of our family, Susan stated with conviction. Michael helped his daughter out of the car, then leaned down to the driver's window. Jennifer, if you ever need a friend, we're here. I know, she replied quietly, and you know where to find me too. As she drove away, Michael stood on the sidewalk for a long time, watching her car go. Something had changed between them in the last week, something that terrified him and filled him with hope at the same time. At the company, Jennifer found David in her office, waiting with a laptop full of pictures. Jennifer, we need to talk, he said without preamble. About what this time? David turned the laptop towards her. On the screen were photos from the last week. Her and Michael in the hospital cafe, her holding Susan's hand, her laughing at something Michael said. Where did you get these? She asked in a cold tone. That's not important. What's important is that someone else could have them too. The media, the competition. Nothing bad is happening. I'm taking care of a child who had an operation. Jennifer, look at yourself in these pictures. You don't look like a philanthropist taking care of a client. You look like a woman in love. Jennifer felt the blood drain from her face. That's absurd. Is it absurd? Jennifer, we've known each other for 20 years. I've never seen you like this in these pictures. Happy, alive. David, that's enough. I won't stop until you understand what you're doing. This man is a former alcoholic with no education and no prospects. He'll use you, and then all of America will be laughing at the Iron Lady who let herself be fooled. Get out! Jennifer screamed, shaking with fury. Jennifer, get out now! When David left, Jennifer sank into her chair, her heart pounding. Was it true? Was she really falling in love? And was David right that it could destroy everything she had built over the years? That night she didn't sleep, staring at the ceiling and thinking about David's words. And in the morning, when Michael called to thank her again and invite her to dinner over the weekend, for the first time in a week, she answered coldly, Thank you, but I'll be busy. I think we should maintain appropriate boundaries in our collaboration. There was silence on the other end. I understand, Michael finally said. I'm sorry if I crossed any lines. When they hung up, they both knew that something had ended before it even had a chance to begin. Chapter 4. 2 weeks after Susan's discharge from the hospital, Michael tried to get back to normal, but something in him was broken. Jennifer's cold tone during their last phone call was keeping him up at night. Susan, despite recovering quickly, noticed the change in her father. "Dad, why don't you call Miss Jennifer anymore?" she asked one evening as they were having dinner. "Because Miss Johnson is very busy, honey." "But she was busy before, and she still talked to us." Michael sighed. "Sometimes adults have to keep a certain distance, Susan." "Does that mean you had a fight?" "No, we didn't. It's just everyone has their own life." Susan put down her fork and looked at her father with a seriousness beyond her years. "Dad, Mum always said that the most important things in life are worth fighting for. Why aren't you fighting?" Michael felt a pang in his heart. "What are you talking about, honey?" "About Miss Jennifer. I saw how she looks at you, and how you look at her, the same way you used to look at Mom. Susan, I know you miss Mom. I miss her too, but Mom wouldn't want us to be sad forever." That night, Michael stood on the balcony for a long time, thinking about his daughter's words. Maybe she was right, he was a coward, but what could he do? Call Jennifer and what? Tell her he missed her? That he thought about her every day? That if he could, he would choose her love over her career? Meanwhile, Jennifer was spending a sleepless night in her apartment. For 2 weeks, every day had been torture. Work no longer interested her, food lost its taste, and even her favorite coffee tasted like cardboard. The worst part was that David treated her with the smugness of a man who had been right all along. "You look terrible," he said one morning, walking into her office with a coffee. "Maybe you should take a vacation." "I don't need a vacation. I need you to stop treating me like a sick relative," Jennifer replied coldly, not looking up from her documents. "Jennifer, I'm worried about you." "Don't worry. I'm doing exactly what you wanted. I'm a model CEO who doesn't mix personal and professional matters." David sat across from her. "I heard that Smith's child had the operation. Apparently, it was successful." Jennifer's hand trembled almost imperceptibly over the document. "How do you know?" "I have my sources. I thought you'd be happy to hear the news." "I am," she said dryly. "Now let's get back to work." But David could see how hard she was fighting to maintain an indifferent expression. He saw how her eyes momentarily welled up with relief and longing. The truth was, Jennifer had been calling the hospital every day, pretending to be a Foundation employee. She knew that Susan's second operation had been successful and that the girl was recovering faster than the doctors had predicted. She also knew that Michael had barely left her bedside for the first 2 weeks after the operation. What she didn't know was that the nurses had become accustomed to these strange calls from the lady from the Foundation, who asked for details that no real Foundation employee would ever ask for. "Does Mr. Smith look well rested? Is he eating regularly? Does Susan ask about anyone special?" Meanwhile, in the small apartment on Main Street, Michael was trying to return to normal. Susan was back in school part-time. Her heart was beating strong and steady, and the doctors were talking about a full recovery. He should have been happy. He was grateful, but something in him had died that day at the hospital when Jennifer walked away with the board members. "Dad, why don't you call Miss Jennifer?" Susan asked one evening as she did her homework at the kitchen table. "I already told you, Ms. Johnson has her own life, but she was busy before, and she still talked to us." Michael sighed. "Sometimes adults have to keep their distance, Susan. Does that mean you had a fight?" "We didn't have a fight. It's just, everyone has their own life." Susan put down her pencil and looked at her father with a seriousness beyond her years. "Dad, Mom always said that the truth doesn't hurt, and the truth is you love Ms. Jennifer, she loves you, but you're both scared." Michael felt a chill. "What are you talking about?" "About Ms. Jennifer. I saw how she looks at you, and how you look at her, just like you used to look at Mom." "Susan, I know you miss Mom, and I know you always will, but Mom wouldn't want you to be lonely all your life just because you're scared to love someone again." Those words hit Michael harder than he had expected. Indeed, Jennifer had never treated Susan like a fragile bird. She talked to her like an equal, listened to her opinions, and laughed at her jokes. "And you know what else I saw?" Susan continued. "I saw how she looks at you, the same way Mum used to look at you." "Susan, Dad, I know you miss Mum, and I know you always will, but Mum wouldn't want you to be lonely just because you're scared to love someone again." That night, after Susan was asleep, Michael sat by the window looking out at the Chicago lights. His daughter was right. He was a coward. But what could he do? Call Jennifer and what? Tell her he missed her, that he thought about her every day, that if he could, he would choose love for her instead of her career. On Wednesday, Susan came home from school with a strange look on her face. "Dad, I met a man today." "What man?" "A fancy one in a suit. He asked me about Miss Jennifer, if she still sees us." Michael felt a pang of worry. And what did you tell him? That it was none of his business. But he was weird. Like he was happy when I told him Miss Jennifer doesn't call us anymore. Did he show you any documents, an ID? No. But he said he was Miss Jennifer's friend and wanted to make sure she was okay. A cold shiver ran down Michael's spine. Something was wrong. That evening he called the hospital to talk to Dr. Williams. Doctor, has anyone asked about my daughter recently? Anyone besides us? Actually, yes. A lady from the foundation calls every few days. She's very interested in you all. She asks for details that, well, they seem more personal than professional. What's her name? She never gives a name, but she has a young, intelligent voice, and she always asks about how you're doing, not just your daughter. After the call, Michael thought for a long time. Was it possible that Jennifer was still interested in them, that despite everything, she hadn't forgotten about them? The next day after work, he drove to Jennifer's office building. He had no plan, didn't know what he would say. He just had to see her. He waited for 2 hours until she came out of the building. When he saw her, his heart stopped for a moment. She was thin, pale, and dressed in a black suit that seemed too big for her. But the worst part was her eyes, empty as if someone had turned off the light in them. He walked up to her as she was heading to her car. Jennifer, she turned sharply. For a moment, something alive flashed in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. Michael, what are you doing here? I wanted to thank you for Susan's operation, for everything. You don't need to thank me. It was a business decision of the foundation. Jennifer, please, let's not pretend it was just business. She looked around nervously. Michael, we can't talk here. Someone might see us. So what? What's the worst that could happen? I could lose everything. Again. And what will you lose by not having us in your life? Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. Michael, please, don't make this any harder than it already is. Susan misses you. She asks every day why you don't call. And you? Do you miss me too? Michael moved closer to her. Every day, every night, every minute. Don't say that, Jennifer whispered. Why? Because it's the truth? Because you feel the same way? Jennifer closed her eyes. Because the truth won't change anything. I have responsibilities, obligation. And what do I have? An empty job, empty evenings, an empty life, and a daughter who asks why adults are so scared to be happy. At that moment, David walked out of the building. He saw them talking and his face turned red with anger. Jennifer, he called out sharply. Jennifer flinched away from Michael as if she had been burned. David, it's not what you think. I know exactly what it is, he replied coldly, walking up to them. Mr. Smith obviously doesn't understand the word no. Stay out of this, Michael said calmly. I'll get involved when someone is harassing my friend and emotionally blackmailing her. Blackmailing? Michael looked at him in disbelief. I just told her the truth. The truth? And the truth is, you're trying to take advantage of the gratitude of a woman who saved your daughter's life. David, that's enough, Jennifer interrupted sharply. But David continued. You think she loves you? She pities you. The difference is fundamental. Michael's face paled. Is that true, Jennifer? Jennifer looked at him with despair in her eyes. Michael, answer me. Is it pity? I can't do this. Not here. Here or nowhere, David interjected. Jennifer, this man is getting in the way of your life and your work. It's time to end it once and for all. Jennifer looked at David, then at Michael. There was a struggle in her eyes, but she finally lowered her head. Michael, I'm sorry. This was all a mistake. A big mistake. The words hit Michael like a punch. I understand, he said quietly. I won't bother you again. He turned and walked away, not looking back. He didn't see Jennifer slide down the side of the building, finally weeping openly. Good for you, David said with satisfaction. You finally ended it. Get out, Jennifer whispered through her tears. What? Get out of here right now before I do something I'll regret. David left, satisfied with himself. He didn't know that he had just crossed a line from which there would be no return. That night, Jennifer sat in her apartment, holding a photo from the hospital. Her, Michael, and Susan, all smiling together. It was the only picture where she looked truly happy in years. At 10 o'clock that evening, the phone rang. An unknown number. Ms. Johnson? This is Susan. Jennifer's heart stopped. Susan? How did you get my number? I called every Johnson in the phone book. Dad doesn't know I'm calling. What's wrong, honey? Dad's crying, the girl said simply. He came home today and he's crying, just like after Mom died. Jennifer felt something break inside her. Susan, Miss Jennifer, do you really not love us? Because Dad thinks you don't love us. I do love you, Jennifer whispered through her tears. I love you more than anything in the world. Then why are you acting this way? Because sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. And do those decisions make everyone sad? Sometimes they do. Then maybe they're bad decisions? Jennifer couldn't answer through her tears. Miss Jennifer, did you know that before Mom left, she told Dad to be happy and to find someone who would love him and be a good mom to me? Susan, and I think Mom chose you for us. And if you leave Dad now, it will be like you're not listening to Mom. After that conversation, Jennifer cried until morning, and in the morning, she made a decision that changed everything. Chapter 5. A month after the hospital meeting, Jennifer was a shadow of her former self. The board had withdrawn the threat of dismissal, but they had set clear conditions. No more contact with unsuitable people and a return to a tough business line. David was triumphant, watching her put on the armor of the Iron Lady each day, but he could also see how that armor was suffocating her. "You look awful," he said one morning, walking into her office with coffee. "Maybe you should take a vacation." "I don't need a vacation. I need you to stop treating me like a sick sister," Jennifer replied coldly, not looking up from her documents. "Jennifer, I'm worried about you." "Don't worry. I'm doing exactly what you wanted. I'm an exemplary CEO who doesn't mix personal and professional matters." David sat across from her. "I found out that Smith's child had the operation. Apparently it was successful." Jennifer's hand trembled almost imperceptibly over the document. "How do you know?" "I have my sources. I thought you'd be happy to have the information." "I am," she said dryly. "Now let's get back to work." But David could see how hard she was fighting to maintain an indifferent expression. He saw how her eyes momentarily misted with relief and longing. The truth was, Jennifer had been calling the hospital every day, pretending to be a Foundation employee. She knew that Susan's second operation had been successful and that the girl was recovering faster than the doctors had predicted. She also knew that Michael had barely left her bedside for the first 2 weeks after the operation. What she didn't know was that the nurses had become accustomed to these strange calls from the lady from the Foundation, who asked for details that no real Foundation employee would ever ask. "Does Mr. Smith look well rested? Is he eating regularly? Does Susan ask about anyone special?" Meanwhile, in the small apartment on Main Street, Michael was trying to get back to normal. Susan was back in school part-time. Her heart was beating strong and steady, and the doctors were talking about a full recovery. He should have been happy. He was grateful, but something in him had died that day at the hospital when Jennifer walked away with the board members. "Dad, why don't you call Miss Jennifer?" Susan asked one evening as she did her homework at the kitchen table. "I already told you, Miss Johnson has her own life, but I know she misses us. Mrs. Williams said she saw on TV how Miss Jennifer looks now, that she looks like a sad ghost." Michael put down his newspaper. "Mrs. Williams watches too much TV." "Dad," Susan put down her pencil and looked at him with a serious expression. "Are adults always such cowards?" "Susan, what?" "Mom always said the truth doesn't hurt, and the truth is, you love Miss Jennifer. She loves you, but you're both scared." Michael sat next to his daughter. "It's not that simple, honey." "And why not? Because she has more money? Because she lives in a big house? Do you think that makes her happy?" "I don't know what makes her happy." "I do," Susan stated firmly. "We make her happy. I saw it in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, someone looked at me not as a sick child, but as a real person." Those words hit Michael harder than he expected. Indeed, Jennifer had never treated Susan like a fragile bird. She talked to her like an equal, listened to her opinions and laughed at her jokes. "And you know what else I saw?" Susan continued. "I saw how she looks at you, the same way Mom used to look at you." "Susan, Dad, I know you miss Mom, and I know you always will. But Mom wouldn't want you to be lonely your whole life just because you're scared to love someone again." That night, after Susan was asleep, Michael sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. His daughter was right. He was a coward. But what could he do? Call Jennifer and what? Tell her he missed her, that he thought about her every day, that if he could, he would choose her love over her career. On Wednesday, Susan came home from school with a strange look on her face. "Dad, I met a man today." "What man?" "A fancy one in a suit. He asked me about Miss Jennifer, if she still sees us." Michael felt a pang of worry. "And what did you tell him?" "That it was none of his business." "But he was weird. Like he was happy when I told him Miss Jennifer doesn't call us anymore." "Did he show you any documents, an ID?" "No, but he said he was Miss Jennifer's friend and wanted to make sure she was okay." A cold shiver ran down Michael's spine. Something was wrong. That evening he called the hospital to talk to Dr. Williams. "Doctor, has anyone asked about my daughter recently? Anyone besides us?" "Actually, yes. A lady from the Foundation calls every few days. She's very interested in you all. She asks for details that, well, they seem more personal than professional." "What's her name?" "She never gives a name, but she has a young, intelligent voice, and she always asks about how you're doing." not just your daughter. After the call, Michael thought for a long time. Was it possible that Jennifer was still interested in them? That despite everything, she hadn't forgotten about them? The next day after work, he drove to Jennifer's office building. He had no plan, didn't know what he would say. He just had to see her. He waited for 2 hours until she came out of the building. When he saw her, his heart stopped for a moment. She was thin, pale, and dressed in a black suit that seemed too big for her. But the worst part was her eyes, empty as if someone had turned off the light in them. He walked up to her as she was heading to her car. "Jennifer," she turned sharply. For a moment, something alive flashed in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. "Michael, what are you doing here? I wanted to thank you for Susan's operation, for everything. You don't need to thank me. It was a business decision of the foundation." "Jennifer, please, let's not pretend it was just business." She looked around nervously. "Michael, we can't talk here. Someone might see us." "So what? What's the worst that could happen? I could lose everything. Again. And what will you lose by not having us in your life?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "Michael, please, don't make this any harder than it already is. Susan misses you. She asks every day why you don't call. And you? Do you miss me too?" Michael moved closer to her. "Every day, every night, every minute." "Don't say that," Jennifer whispered. "Why? Because it's the truth? Because you feel the same way?" Jennifer closed her eyes. "Because the truth won't change anything. I have responsibilities, obligation. And what do I have? An empty job, empty evenings, an empty life, and a daughter who asks why adults are so scared to be happy." At that moment, David walked out of the building. He saw them talking and his face turned red with anger. "Jennifer," he called out sharply. Jennifer flinched away from Michael as if she had been burned. "David, it's not what you think." "I know exactly what it is," he replied coldly, walking up to them. "Mr. Smith obviously doesn't understand the word no. Stay out of this," Michael said calmly. "I'll get involved when someone is harassing my friend and emotionally blackmailing her." "Blackmailing?" Michael looked at him in disbelief. "I just told her the truth. The truth. And the truth is, you're trying to take advantage of the gratitude of a woman who saved your daughter's life." "David, that's enough!" Jennifer interrupted sharply. But David continued. "You think she loves you? She pities you. The difference is fundamental." Michael's face paled. "Is that true, Jennifer?" Jennifer looked at him with despair in her eyes. "Michael, answer me. Is it pity? I can't do this. Not here. Here or nowhere," David interjected. "Jennifer, this man is getting in the way of your life and your work. It's time to end it once and for all." Jennifer looked at David, then at Michael. There was a struggle in her eyes, but she finally lowered her head. "Michael, I'm sorry. This was all a mistake. A big mistake." The words hit Michael like a punch. "I understand," he said quietly. "I won't bother you again." He turned and walked away, not looking back. He didn't see Jennifer slide down the side of the building, finally weeping openly. "Good for you," David said with satisfaction. "You finally ended it." "Get out," Jennifer whispered through her tears. "What? Get out of here right now before I do something I'll regret." David left, satisfied with himself. He didn't know that he had just crossed a line from which there would be no return. That night, Jennifer sat in her apartment holding a photo from the hospital. Her, Michael, and Susan, all smiling together. It was the only picture where she looked truly happy in years. At 10 o'clock that evening, the phone rang. An unknown number. "Ms. Johnson, this is Susan." Jennifer's heart stopped. "Susan, how did you get my number?" "I called every Johnson in the phone book. Dad doesn't know I'm calling." "What's wrong, honey?" "Dad's crying," the girl said simply. "He came home today and he's crying, just like after Mom died." Jennifer felt something break inside her. "Susan, Ms. Jennifer, do you really not love us? Because Dad thinks you don't love us." "I do love you," Jennifer whispered through her tears. "I love you more than anything in the world." "Then why are you acting this way?" Because sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions." "And do those decisions make everyone sad?" "Sometimes they do. Then maybe they're bad decisions." Jennifer couldn't answer through her tears. "Miss Jennifer, did you know that before Mom left, she told Dad to be happy and to find someone who would love him and be a good mom to me?" "Susan, and I think Mom chose you for us. And if you leave Dad now, it will be like you're not listening to Mom." After that conversation, Jennifer cried until morning. And in the morning, she made a decision that changed everything. Chapter 6. The next morning, Jennifer walked into her office with a determination she hadn't felt in months. The late-night call with Susan had been a cold splash of water. It opened her eyes to what was truly important in life. David was already waiting by her desk with her morning coffee, and a triumphant smile. "See? I knew you'd make the right decision," he said, placing the cup on the desk. "Now we can finally focus on business." "David, we need to talk," Jennifer replied calmly, sitting down at her desk. "Of course. I have the new contracts with the Germans ready. As soon as word got out that you ended that affair, they came right back to us. It wasn't an affair, David, and I haven't ended anything." The smile vanished from his face. "What do you mean?" Jennifer opened her desk drawer and pulled out a folder she had prepared that morning. "I mean that for the past few weeks I've been checking our contracts, our finances, and your methods." "Jennifer, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about how you've been inflating company losses so the board would think my emotional decisions were harming the business." Jennifer opened the folder and laid the documents in front of him. "The Germans didn't pull out because of my contact with Michael. They pulled out because you suggested I was no longer a tough negotiator." David's face went pale. "That's absurd. Why would I?" "Because you've been in love with me for 20 years, and you thought that if you destroyed my chance at love with Michael, I would finally notice you." The silence in the office was deafening. David tried to control his expression, but it was too late. "David, you've been doing this for years. Every man I showed interest in, you discreetly scared off or discredited. James was the exception because he came from the right family and fit your idea of what my husband should be. Jennifer, I was just trying to protect you." "Protect me from what? From happiness? From love? From life?" David sank heavily into a chair. "You don't understand. This man, Smith, he'll use you. Everyone uses you for your money." "Everyone? Or are you the only one who's been using me?" Jennifer stood up and walked to the window. 20 years, David. 20 years of manipulation, control, and protecting me from life." "I love you," he whispered. "No, you want to possess me. It's not the same thing." David stood up abruptly. "And this maintenance man loves you? This alcoholic with no prospects?" "Yes," Jennifer replied calmly, turning to face him. "He loves me for who I am. He doesn't want to change me, control me, or protect me from the world. He just loves me. This is insane. Maybe, but it's my insanity. And my decision." David moved closer, his eyes burning with anger. "If you walk out of this office right now and go to him, I will destroy you. I have documents, contacts, I can strip you of everything." "You can try," Jennifer smiled, "but I have documents too, about how you manipulated contracts, about how you spied on my friends, about how you used company funds for personal reasons." David recoiled as if he had been struck. You can't do that. You can't manage without me. I managed for 30 years. I'll manage for the next 30. David stared at her for a moment, as if seeing her for the first time. Then his face twisted with rage. "Fine, but remember, when your prince leaves you, when you realize that all of this was just to get your money, don't come to me for help." "I won't," she replied calmly. "Goodbye, David." When he left, slamming the door, Jennifer sat down at her desk and for the first time in months felt a sense of lightness. She was free, but now came the hardest part. She had to find Michael and explain everything. She also had to face the possibility that it might be too late. At 4 p.m. she drove to Susan's school. The little girl came out of the building with a group of friends, but when she saw Jennifer's car, she stopped in her tracks. Jennifer rolled down the window. "Hi, Susan, can we talk?" Susan walked to the car with a cautious smile. "Miss Jennifer, what are you doing here?" "I came for some advice, from the smartest little girl I know." Susan got in the car, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I need help," Jennifer said. "Yesterday I hurt your dad a lot. I told him things that weren't true because I was scared." "What were you scared of?" "I was scared that if I loved him with all my heart, he might leave me, like everyone else." Susan nodded with solemnity. "I understand. Dad is scared too. Ever since Mom left, he's been scared to love anyone again. So what do you advise?" "Mom always said that love isn't something you own, it's something you give. And the more you give, the more you have." Jennifer felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Susan, do you think Dad can forgive me? Dad loves you. I can see it. But you have to show him that you love him too. Really love him, not pretend." "How?" Susan thought for a moment. "Dad always says that the most important things are done in public, so everyone knows what's really important." "In public?" "Yes. Like when you get married or baptize a baby, in front of everyone so everyone knows." Jennifer smiled. The idea was crazy, but maybe that's what made it perfect. "Susan, do you know where your dad is right now?" "At home. He hasn't left since yesterday. He says he's sick, but I know he's sad. And would you be willing to help me with a plan?" The girl's eyes lit up. "What kind of plan?" The next day, on Friday evening, Michael sat in his living room staring blankly at the TV. Susan had been buzzing around the apartment for an hour, clearly excited about something. "Dad, are we going somewhere?" she asked for the 10th time. "We're not going anywhere, honey. We're staying home. But it's such a beautiful evening. Can we go to the lake or to the park?" "Susan, I don't feel like taking a walk. How about downtown, to that cafe in the city square where they have good ice cream?" Michael looked at his daughter. There was something strange about her, a certain anticipation. "Susan, what's going on?" "Nothing's going on. I just want to spend time with my dad." Finally, he couldn't resist her pleas any longer. At 7 o'clock, they left the house and headed downtown. The city square was full of tourists and locals enjoying the warm spring evening. When they got to the cafe, Susan suddenly stopped. "Dad, look." Michael looked up. In the middle of the square by the fountain stood Jennifer. She was wearing a simple light blue dress and holding a bouquet of white roses. People were gathering around her, listening as she spoke through a small portable speaker. "I'm looking for a man named Michael Smith. He's 34 years old and the best father in the world to a 9-year-old daughter named Susan." Michael felt his knees buckle. "What is she doing?" "Listen, Dad," Susan whispered, pulling him closer. "I met this man a few months ago," Jennifer continued, her voice carrying across the square. "He was a maintenance man then, asking for help for his sick daughter. But I saw something more in him. I saw a man who, despite a tragedy, never gave up, who fought every day for what's most important, the love for his child." The people around them listened intently. Some pulled out their phones, taking pictures and videos. "This man taught me that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in the love we give to others. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting in spite of fear." Jennifer scanned the crowd, looking for Michael. "And he taught me that sometimes you have to risk everything to gain what's truly important." She saw him in the crowd. Their eyes met. "Michael Smith," she said directly to him, "can you forgive me? Can you give us another chance?" The crowd parted, creating a path between them. Michael stood paralyzed, feeling the eyes of hundreds of people on him. "Dad," Susan whispered, gently pushing him. "Go to her." Michael took the first step, then the second. With each step, he felt all his fears and doubts fall away. When he stood before Jennifer, she held out the bouquet of roses to him. "These flowers are for you," she said, smiling through her tears, "because you're the one who made me blossom again." "Jennifer," Michael whispered, "do you know what you're doing? Everyone's watching." "I know, and I want them to watch. I want everyone to know that I love you, you and Susan, and that I'll never again let fear separate us." Michael took the bouquet and pulled her into a tight embrace. "I love you too. From the first moment I saw you with Susan in the hospital." The crowd erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "Long live love," and someone else started singing, "For he's a jolly good fellow." Susan ran up to them and hugged both of their legs. "That was the best plan of my life." "Susan, was this your plan?" Michael asked, astonished. "Mine and Miss Jennifer's, because adults sometimes need help being brave." Jennifer hugged the little girl. "My smart little daughter." "Daughter?" Susan looked at her hopefully. "If you'll let me be your new mum," Jennifer replied. "And can a person have two mums, one in heaven and one on earth?" "God willing they can." Michael smiled. A year later, at St. Michael's Church in Chicago, Jennifer and Michael stood before the altar, exchanging vows. Susan, as the maid of honor, held the rings and kept wiping her eyes because something got in them. "Every cloud has a silver lining," whispered Jennifer's grandma, sitting in the front pew with Michael's neighbors from Main Street. Jennifer's company, under a new board, was thriving better than ever. The renovation project for the apartment building on Mariacca Street was turned into a culture and education center for children from underprivileged families. Michael was its technical director, and Susan, when she wasn't in school, helped out as a young volunteer. "A blessing in disguise," said the pastor, as he pronounced them husband and wife, "because from the greatest trials, the most beautiful love stories are often born." As they left the church under a shower of rice, Susan grabbed Jennifer's hand. "Mom, Jennifer, will you tell me a bedtime story tonight?" "What story, honey?" "About how you met my dad, and how we became a real family." "With pleasure," Jennifer replied, kissing the top of her daughter's head. In the distance, over the Hudson, the sun set, reflecting a golden light on the water like a promise of the beautiful days they had ahead of them. Conclusion of the story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Michael, Jennifer, and little Susan has touched your hearts. It is a tale of how true love doesn't ask about your background or bank account, but about the size of your heart and the courage to be happy. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories that show that even after the greatest suffering, you can find new love and hope, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and let us know in the comments what touched you most in this story. Was it a father's determination to fight for his daughter, or the courage of a woman who chose love over social norms, Or maybe the wisdom of little Susan, who knew that hearts are big enough to hold both old and new love. We bring you daily stories that celebrate the strength of the human spirit and show that everyone deserves a second chance. We're waiting for you in the comments.